Europa, Danmark er ikke sikker og fri, så længe ukrainerne ikke er sikre og frie. Så den kamp, ukrainerne kæmper, det er i virkeligheden en kamp for os alle sammen.
What is happening in Ukraine now, it's not only about Ukraine. If Russia succeeds in Ukraine, that will have dramatic repercussions across the globe.
Ukraines udenrigsminister besøgte i dag Danmark for at tale om konflikten mellem Vesten og Rusland om Ukraine. Ukraine forsøger selvfølgelig at samle så meget støtte som muligt for omverdenen, og det fik Ukraine i dag i Danmark. Omkring 550 millioner kroner vil Danmark give i støtte til Ukraine, penge, der skal gå til at fremme demokrati og menneskerettigheder i landet. Besøget finder sted, mens verdens øjne er rettet mod Ukraines østlige grænse, hvor Rusland har opmarcheret flere end 100.000 soldater. De har skabt frygt i Ukraine, men også i Vesten for, at Rusland vil invadere sit naboland og indlede en ny, omfattende krig i Europa.
Det er en reel fare for en ny militær konflikt i Europa.
Russia has placed a gun to Ukraine's head.
It's bigger than a conflict between two countries. It's bigger than Russia and NATO. It's a crisis with global consequences.
The most dangerous moment since the Cold War ended.
S'il devait y avoir une agression, la riposte sera là et le coût sera très élevé.
But it will be enormous consequences worldwide. This would be the largest, if he were to move in with all those forces, it would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
Tidligere i dag havde jeg besøg af Ukraines udenrigsminister Dmytro Kuleba. Hans besøg skulle egentlig have fundet sted for 10 dage siden, men der kom der sygdom i vejen. Kuleba skulle i forrige uge have deltaget i åbningen af Moskov Museums nye udstilling om vikingernes togter ned af russiske og ukrainske floder. Jeg spurgte ham først, hvorfor. Hvorfor satte han tid af, mens verden holder vejret og hans land står på randen af krig, til at besøge en udstilling om vikingerne?
Well, first because no war can cancel life. And we've been fighting a war against Russia since 2014. Second, because Vikings are part of our cultural heritage, are part of our history. And when President Putin claims that Ukraine and Russia are the same countries and they have the same history, actually, I have to tell you that it's Ukraine and Denmark who have the same history if we speak about early medieval times and the times of Vikings. This is the connection, the bond that brings together Nordic countries and Ukraine. We share common history with you.
President Putin, on a number of occasions, have said that Ukraine and Russia Ukrainians and Russians are basically one people, a whole. Is that also how you look at it?
Well, you should consider these words by President Putin as classic example of Russian propaganda. We are a separate nation. It is true that for 300 years, since the middle 17th century, Ukraine had been part of the Russian Empire, but we entered that empire. We joined forces with Russia as an independent nation, and in the beginning, it was just the military alliance between Ukraine and Moscow. Unfortunately, due to Russian aggressive policies, in the end, they destroyed our autonomy and fully integrated us into their body, but we are not the same people.
So you would say Ukraine's roots as a country, its culture, is just as much in this part of Europe as it is in Russia?
Granddaughter of the Prince of Kiev, Yaroslav the Great, was the wife of the Danish king. I think this is the answer to your question.
Okay, let's talk about the current crisis that's being at the center of your talks here in Copenhagen and is making headlines around the world. In just a few words, who's to blame for the crisis?
Russia.
And will there be a war?
Hopefully, no. We are making everything possible with the support of our partners, including Denmark. I would like to commend Denmark for demonstrating true leadership in these times of crisis. So we're doing everything possible to demotivate President Putin from resorting to war and from resolving this crisis through diplomacy.
According to Russian state media, it's actually Ukraine, not Russia, who is preparing troops getting troops ready to attack Luhansk and Donbass. Are you?
According to Russian state media, Earth is flat. You know, that's definitely not the source of independent media that should be trusted. We are not preparing any offensive operations. We are not preparing any provocations. We are 100% committed to the diplomatic solution of this conflict, and we are ready to go along the implementation of Minsk agreements within the established formats, trilateral contact group and Normandy format.
Does Russia have a legitimate interest to look after in the eastern part of Ukraine?
No, it doesn't. Russia's legitimate interests end where the border with Ukraine begins. And this border should be respected. Russia violated
there are
this border.
hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians in that part of the country who speaks Russian and who feel very close to Russia.
Language is not the criteria to divide people. No, we are a bilingual country. People speak Russian, people speak Ukrainian. It's the attitude towards Russia that really matters. The problem is that over the last 8 years, Russia heavily passportized residents of the occupied territories in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions. So now Russia claims that these people are Russian citizens and it has the right to protect them. But this is all fake because they launched this campaign of issuing Russian passports deliberately to create this pretext. They did not do it in good faith, and this is a totally illegitimate action.
So if it's not for the concern of Russian speakers in the eastern part of Ukraine, is Russia, what is the real motive, you think, behind Russia's policies and build-up of military on the border with Ukraine?
There are two answers. The first one relates only to Ukraine. Russia cannot allow a successful democracy, a vibrant democratic society to exist in its own vicinity. And we are a big vibrating democracy. And then there is a broader answer to it that concerns also Denmark. Russia wants to rewrite the European security architecture and European order. And its interests stretch from the Arctics to the Black Sea in this part of the world. And they want to impose their will. They want Europe to be afraid to make concessions to Russia in order to avoid more pressure from Russia. And this is why we shouldn't allow him to prevail neither in Ukraine nor in a broader agenda. Russia should play by the rules.
But also, if you put yourself in Moscow and look to the West, you see one country after another becoming, in the past 20 years, becoming a member of NATO. Isn't there a good reason to be, on the part of Ukraine, sensitive to this reluctance to see NATO troops in countries more or less all the way from the Black Sea to the Arctic Sea?
But Russia should offer those countries a more attractive model of security. Russia should ask itself why in the last 30 years everyone is trying to escape from us. Why did Soviet republics, including Ukraine, announce independence in 1991? Why did Central European countries escape social camp? Maybe something is wrong with Russia and not with NATO.
Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and therefore Ukraine cannot expect NATO to come to its aid in an event of a Russian invasion. But what do you hope and what do you expect NATO countries and the alliance to do should the invasion come?
Every country can find the way to help if it has the political will to do so. Denmark has demonstrated that it's willing to help. Today, as a result of my negotiations here in Copenhagen, I can conclude that Denmark is willing to help more. It's up for every country to find a way, either to help us strengthen our defense or to help us strengthen our financial system. We do not expect other countries to fight for our country. This is our land, these are our people. We've been fighting this war since 2014 without being a member of NATO. We know how to fight, but it will be much easier to prevent a war if partners support us.
The Danish government today pledged support for Ukraine and also an amount of, I think, 500 million Danish kroner in support, but of the political development of Ukraine, not military aid. Are you disappointed that Denmark is unwilling to help Ukraine militarily?
Well, we never heard no from Denmark. And today I raised this issue with Danish authorities, and I'm looking forward for their response.
You're hopeful that there might be military aid as well?
Well, Denmark has already supported us on many accounts, and I will first hear the response, and then I will make a decision how to handle it.
All right. A foreign diplomat in Kiev last week told me that many Ukrainians compare the current situation with the great powers negotiating over Ukraine's future with what happened in Europe in 1938 in Munich, where you also had great powers bargaining over lesser countries in Europe. Is that a reasonable comparison? And do you share the concern?
Well, first, so far we haven't seen any indicator that big powers are bargaining about us behind our back. Second, we read history books as well. We watch history movies. And therefore, in the very beginning of this crisis, we said clearly and squarely to big powers that even if you dare to negotiate any deal on Ukraine, without Ukraine, we will not accept any demands that you will try to impose on us.
Dmytro Kuleba, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.